Good morning and welcome to Caretaker's Corner, where we discuss everything that has to do with caring for our elderly and disabled parents, our disabled spouses, and our adult disabled children. My name is CJ and I am here to help you in this journey. We have started a series on the grieving process. So this is the second video and we're going to discuss the first step or stage of grieving, which is denial. And the first thing you need to know about all of these stages of grieving is that you may not go through all of them. You probably will, and you may go through them multiple times, but they are a necessity. It's a process that you're working through, and there is no shame in it. And these are just general ideas of how it works. It may work a little different with you. Could be a little bit more severe, could be not so severe. You could go through them like that. I mean, like with my dad, I went through the grieving process relatively fast, but when my brother passed away, I went through it. It took a long time. But I think that's because, like, you know, it's you're ingrained. Your parents are supposed to go before the kids, so I think that's really a lot of that. But so we're going to discuss the first stage, which is denial. This stage involves disbelief and shock. It's a defense mechanism that allows us to cope with overwhelming emotions. We deny death, we deny diagnoses and prognoses, and our loved ones that we are caring for will deny the same thing. So they're going to be going through the grieving process while we're going through the grieving process. And we're not going to be going through the grieving process at the same rate or have the same emotions at the same times, and it's going to be extremely stressful. I know when Barbara got her diagnosis, we went through it at different rates. You know, I was let's tackle this and see what we need to do, let's get to the doctors, and Barbara was really in denial there for a while, but she was like, oh, I can still do everything I've always done, and that's not really how that one worked out. Denial is a protective shield. It's our mind's way of protecting itself from overwhelming emotions and situations. The death of a loved one is traumatic for most people, and it can cause you to want to shut down and not function. You can be walking and one moment be perfectly good, the next moment crying. So these stages are all a way of helping us deal with the emotions that we're having to deal with. Part of denial is this can't be happening situation and scenario. It's a common feeling of disbelief where we struggle to accept the situation, and it may cause us to not do what we need to do. So it can cause us to just stop and go, okay, this isn't happening, so I don't have to accept it. I don't have to take action. I don't have to seek help. I don't have to seek medical advice. It causes us just to stop. And that is not a good place to be. It's one of those things in this stage that we have to work on getting through, because whatever the diagnosis, whatever the situation, we need to seek that help. Also, along that lines is minimizing the situation. So, like, for instance, when Barbara had her surgery, she was doing really well initially. And so we were all very, yay, she's doing better, she'll be perfect again. And then, as she was healing and time went by, she started regressing a bit where it didn't do as much as we were hoping. And that's kind of the same situation. We take and we go, oh, look at this improvement. Oh, they managed to do their dishes by themselves a week in a row. They're improving, so we don't have to worry the diagnosis was wrong. That is not accurate. We start grabbing onto the little things, hoping that this is going to give us the emphasis we need or the hope we need to keep going on. And there's a difference between hope and delusion. And sometimes in our attempts to work through the situation and work through the denial, we delude ourselves into thinking things are better off than they are, which once again goes back to it causes us to not seek the help we need. It causes us to not take the medicine, not do the therapy. So yeah, we need to work on that. Selective attention. People may selectively focus on information that supports their views while ignoring and dismissing contradictory evidence. First thing, I always warn everybody, yes, if you have a situation, you do need to research it, and whatever your diagnosis is, research the diagnosis, research all the evidence that's out there, research the way, the treatments, the medicines, therapies, but try and remember that you've got doctors for a reason. I, in my personal life, have had issues with doctors because of some medical issues I have, and so I know the idea of doing the research and going, oh, well, I'll just do this, or I don't think the doctor knew what they were talking about, so I won't worry about that. And that can put you in a much worse situation, because it can cause your medical issues or your loved one's medical issues to get exponentially worse. So stay off of WebMD. Go to like the big ones, Mayo Clinic, all of those. But try to remember that you have a doctor for a reason. Now, if you're not happy with the result or with the diagnosis, by all means, seek a second opinion. Seek a third opinion. But there's going to come a point where you're going to have to quit denying and accept the situation so that you can tackle the situation. All right? Just because you don't like the diagnosis doesn't mean it's not accurate. It also doesn't mean that you can't do stuff to improve the situation. But the longer you stay in denial, the harder that will be. Also, there may come a point where you have to decide, okay, yes, this is our diagnosis. And like in the case of it being a terminal diagnosis, are you going to fight? Are you going to deny it? Or are you going to take the time to fight and spend time with your family member to make the best of what time you have left? And that is a big decision you have to make. And the problem with denial is the longer we're in it, the less we're making those decisions. Denial will hinder us from making those important decisions that we need to make. Now, specifically for caregivers, denial is one of those stages, actually all the stages of grief will do this. So you'll probably hear me go over this next section quite a bit, but burnout. It's one thing that we deal with every day as caretakers, is caretaker burnout. When we're in denial, we're going to try harder. We're going to think that the more I can do, the more I can stop the situation. If I just keep going, and if I just keep trying, and I can change the outcome. Or I can handle this all by myself. I don't need any help. And I'm going to tell you, that's the one that gets us every time. And do not have a problem with asking for help, whether it's a family member, whether there comes a point where if you can afford it, you pay for outside help, whether the insurance, you can get respite or in-home health. I mean, understand there comes a point where you're gonna need help. You cannot do this by yourself. It's what we do every day is just difficult. But to try and take extra steps and to put all this on yourself, you're gonna burn out. And if you remember, the number one rule for caretakers is if we burn out, we cannot take care of our family members. And I know that my motto for life is, my family comes first. I have to take care of my family. That's just the way I feel. So burnout has been a big issue over the years. I have a lot of help, and I have a lot of help because I have two really good friends that have helped me. One has recently become disabled herself, and so I'm there to help them the way they've been here to help me. The next thing I want to go over is the difference between denial and hope. Denial is, we use that to avoid reality and to avoid the situation. This isn't happening. I don't believe it. I'm not dealing with it. Whereas hope is a way which we seek a positive outcome. So hope is wanting the best. Denial is just not accepting anything, refusing to accept whatever the situation is. If we have hope, hope is very positive, number one. But by having hope, we can help ourselves to find the help that we need, whether that be medical, whether that be searching for more opinions, whether that be researching possible diets or alternative ways of treating, so that's one of those things that we need hope in our lives, especially when you're going through grief. And I know when you're in grief, hope can be hard to come by. But when you have it, you got to grab onto it and hold on to it with all your might. There are ways of recognizing denial in yourself and in your loved ones. You want to listen for statements such as, I can't believe, or this isn't really happening, which of course is something that we're going to say quite often, especially in the beginning of a diagnosis. As we move along in the diagnosis, we will end up where we accept it and move on. And I mean, this is part of the grieving process. Those terms and those statements will get fewer and fewer. We tend to minimize the situation. Like for Barbara, she's just tired a whole lot, or the pain in her face is just due to weather changes, or the reason she can't lift what she used to is because she's just really tired. And it turns out that none of that was the case. So we want to not minimize it. If you have an elderly parent who suddenly is showing signs of dementia, don't go, it's just a little forgetfulness. I mean, as we get older, we all start to forget things. I've recently discovered it's actually part of menopause also, so that's a really great thing. We tend to ignore medical advice, which I never agree with. I do think that sometimes medical advice may not be exactly the situation that you have. Like I said, I go back to my own situation, but that's a crazy situation. Refusal to plan for the future. There's always plan for the future, because you do not know what's going to happen. You don't have an expiration date, neither does your loved one, written on the bottom of their foot. And just because you have a diagnosis that may seem terminal or is a terminal diagnosis, you can last, people have lasted decades with a terminal diagnosis. So that doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow. Plan for the future. Make the plans. In our household, we make lots of plans, but we wait to buy the tickets at the last minute because we're not sure how everyone's going to feel on that day. The Ren Festival is coming up starting in June. We try to go every year. And every year we'll plan, but we won't buy those tickets until it gets closer to the Ren Festival. That way, we're not out the money, but we still make those plans. So make your plans. Plans help give hope. Plans also help give structure. And structure is what is needed when you're going through the grieving process, in my opinion. Some people don't like structure, but I'm very structure oriented. Another thing is you hold on to unrealistic hopes. Like I said, hope is a great thing. But like in our situation, or in my brother's situation, my brother was in a wheelchair for a long time. And we were working really hard on helping him being able to walk again. We had to do surgeries and everything. And he had a unrealistic hope that he would be able to play basketball and run again. And he was able to walk. He had to wear braces and everything and use the crutches, but he was able to walk on his own, but he wasn't going to be able to play basketball. So that would be an unrealistic hope. Hope, you're going to walk again. Unrealistic hope, you're going to be able to play basketball again. So you gotta hold those in a bit of a, you gotta hold on to both of those, but you gotta be realistic also. Another thing that we tend to do is we get emotionally distant or avoidance. Now, people tend to avoid situations that remind them of the diagnosis or remind them of their situation. People will try and stay out of situations that where, like out of big groups. I know when Barbara first got diagnosed, she started really becoming more reclusive. And then, of course, we were able to work with that for a while, and she still got more and more reclusive. And then, of course, we had COVID happen where everybody got reclusive. So we're trying to get her, we're back to not being like that. So, but it is a natural form of denial. Now, the most important thing about denial you need to remember is it's temporary. It is a necessary step, but it is temporary. You will work through it. It may be longer for others. Like I said, I went through everything, the grieving process with my dad, fairly fast, but with my brother, it took months. And I know some people, it could take years. Barbara, it took her, I would have to say a couple of years to actually accept the fact that she could not do anything that she used to do. Barbara was a caretaker herself of her parents, and she could lift her mother every day, multiple times a day, because her mother was paraplegic. And she could lift her dad, and she did all this stuff. And now I have to open containers for her, and she can barely lift herself most days. So since surgery, there has been improvement, but not as fast as we were all hoping. And once again, there we go back into our denial and our grieving process. So when we're trying to move through denial, which is something that we do want to work through once we realize what we're doing, is we need to acknowledge the fact that we are in denial. Gradually accept our situation and that we are grieving and that we are in denial. Whatever the situation, whether it's a death or a diagnosis, most of what we deal with here is diagnoses and conditions. We need to seek as much information and education about it as we can. Like I said, research, but remember your doctors. Seek support. Like I said, don't be afraid to get help, but also seek support, not just medical support, but emotional support and psychological support. There is nothing wrong with therapy. I say it like almost every week. Therapy is a good thing. Therapy is a great thing. Seek therapy, because the grieving process is one of if there's any reason in life to seek therapy, the grieving process is what therapy, I think, is all about. If you don't feel comfortable with therapy, talk to a friend. Just get those emotions out. Journal. I'm all for meditation and self-reflection. Focus on what you can control. And most importantly, allow yourself to grieve. It is a process that we all have to go through, no matter what. Even if we feel that we are too strong to have to grieve, we all have to grieve. So be willing to grieve. That's really about all I have to say about this subject. Next week we will be going into the second stage, which is anger. And none of us know anything about that, right? So I hope this video has helped you, and if it has, please like, subscribe, and share. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. It is Easter, so happy Easter, or like we say in my house, Hoppy Easter. And I will see you next week.